Communist monopoly. What's wrong with communism? There are many things wrong with communism, but one of these is the monopoly of power that the Communist Party takes and the consequent reduction of the entire population to the obedient servants of communism, in effect slaves. On one occasion, I was debating with Ben Dobbs, the executive secretary of the Communist Party of Southern California. Ben Dobbs challenged me with this question. He said, "Dr. Schwarz, what's wrong with communism? We communists believe in full employment. What's wrong with that? We communists believe in medical care for the sick and the elderly. What's wrong with that? We communists believe in the end of war for all time. What's wrong with that? We communists believe in universal peace and human brotherhood. What's wrong with that?" Then he turned to me and he said, "Don't you agree with these things, Dr. Schwarz?" That question was quite a challenge, because who can be against full employment and for unemployment? Who can look with complacency upon old people who are ill and uncared for? Who can survey the carnage and horror and slaughter of war with pleasure? Who can support discrimination and bigotry? And if communism is against these things, surely there's some good in it. I thought as fast as I could. Then I said, "This reminds me of the mackerel swimming by off the coast, and floating towards it, it sees a beautiful bit of fish. It says to itself, 'High protein content.' What's wrong with that? Delicious aroma. What's wrong with that? Highly nutritious. It will build splendid fish tissue. What's wrong with that? Just the right size. I can take it in one gorgeous mouthful. What's wrong with that?" I said, "What's wrong with it is the hook in it. And what's wrong with communism is the hook of monopoly and dictatorship that is buried within the bait of these good things that you have presented. Because communism is monopoly. One of the paradoxes is that the communists, who are the supreme practitioners of monopoly, have accused the United States throughout the world of being the great monopoly power. And they have made the word monopoly a dirty word throughout the world. I was talking once with Dorothy Healy, the chairman of the Communist Party of Southern California, and she said to me, "But what about the dreadful monopolies in America?" I looked at her for a moment. Then I said, "Did I hear you right? Did you say monopoly? A communist talking about monopoly? It's a wonder the word doesn't shrivel in your throat. That's like Al Capone talking against crime. That's like Hitler talking against bigotry, because communism is the very essence of monopoly. It is a political monopoly. There is one political party and one only, the Communist Party, and the Communist Party monopolizes political power. It's an economic monopoly. The Communist Party controls all the economic forces of society. Fundamentally, it's the only employer. It's the only merchandiser. It's the only banker. It controls all trade, both domestic and foreign. It's an educational monopoly. The Communist Party control all the schools, select and train all the teachers, write all the textbooks, choose the curriculum, decide what students will attend which institutions. It's a police monopoly. The Communist Party controls the entire police force. It's a military monopoly. It's a labour monopoly. The Communist Party controls and directs the labour unions, which are servants of the Communist Party, with the objective of increasing the productivity of the labour force. Communism is monopoly, and once this monopoly power is mature, every individual is at the absolute mercy of the Communist Party, and if the Communist Party wants to, it can cut off his food supply at will. And once a power is established so that it can control the fundamental necessity of life, food for every individual, it is able to exercise a tyranny greater than anything history has known. And this is precisely the position that the Communist Party occupies. I've often used the illustration of a man in Russia who earns the displeasure of the Communist Party, which has monopoly control of all forces within that society, and question communists as to where he can get food if the Communist Party does not want him to have it. The illustration that I've chosen is the case of Boris Pasternak. Pasternak was one of Russia's greatest writers. During an alleged thaw in the Cold War, he wrote the book Dr. Zhivago, mildly critical of communism. He was applauded throughout the world. He was given the Nobel Prize, but the Communist Party of Russia frowned on him. He was not allowed to leave Russia to accept the Nobel Prize. His book was not published within Russia, but superficially, he wasn't punished very openly. He was expelled from the Union of Soviet Writers, and that is very significant indeed. But he was not arrested, imprisoned, tortured, sent to Siberia, and the apologists for dictatorship say communism is improving, becoming more benign, granting greater liberty. Stalin would have arrested him and tortured him and shot him out of hand. But the modern generation of communist leaders did not do that. No, they didn't. But what did they do? Well, I don't know. At least I can't prove it. But 12 months later, we're told that Pasternak became ill and he died, allegedly of cancer of the lung. I have a question that I have put to many communists, but never have I been able to secure a satisfactory answer. My question was this: did Pasternak starve to death? Where did he get his food? In a monopoly society, when you earn the displeasure of the monopoly power and they decide to cut off your food supply, how do you eat? Pasternak was a writer. A writer is not paid for writing. His books must be published. He needs a publisher. Within the United States, there are literally hundreds of publishers, and if one won't publish your book, you're perfectly free to go to another and urge them to do so. But within the communist system, there is basically one publisher. There may be a few sub-departments of this central publishing department, but there is the communist monopoly of publishing. It is directed by the Communist Party. This man has been expelled from the Union of Soviet Writers, therefore his book must not be published. If the Communist Party says don't employ him, he becomes unemployable. During his lifetime, he's been well paid. He translated Shakespeare into Russian, and it's quite possible that he has saved up a considerable sum of money, and naturally he keeps it in the bank. So along to the bank he goes to draw it out. But the question is, what bank? In the Soviet state, there's only one bank, the State Bank, directed by the Communist Party. The Communist Party can simply say, this man's funds are frozen. Don't give him any money. Since he can't draw out his own money from the bank, naturally he might think, well, I'll take them to court. I'll go to court and force them to give it to me. But what court? This is a court set up by the communists to promote class justice according to laws written by the communists and laws which by definition do not control the communists. The Communist Party is above the law. The Communist Party can say to the courts, don't give this man a verdict. Therefore, he has no hope from the courts, which are the monopoly control of the Communist Party. If he looks round his house and sees a bit of furniture, he says, this should be worth something. I'll see what they'll give me for this. How's he going to sell it? The only place selling furniture is the monopoly store directed by the Communist Party. He is face to face with the most total monopoly ever conceived or dreamed in the minds of man. If they wish him to eat, he eats. If they wish him to starve, he starves. I have never said that Pasternak did starve. I do not know. I have said that the system of communism gives them the power to starve him or any other individual at will, if it so decides. Communism is the system of tyranny where it can starve as a punishment any individual in that society. Once this power is thoroughly established, the very threat of it will be adequate to control each individual. It won't be necessary to establish prisons, because a person can starve just as well out of prisoners' inn. In fact, the entire country becomes one vast prison, and the only recourse for an individual is flight. This accounts for the headlong flight of millions of refugees from communist countries wherever it is in power, because, in effect, communism is the establishment of a vast prison, and therefore it needs to erect Berlin walls and iron curtains and barbed wire entanglements to keep the prisoners from fleeing to the outside and freedom.